Herb Jones has signed an extension with the Pelicans. We get to celebrate because that makes him part of the core going forward. But can the same be said for Zion Williamson? We'll break down the extension, the future of the core of this team, and look at head coach Willie Green in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans in NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Tuesday. We finally get to talk about something other than Summer League for a minute. We'll get back to those games tomorrow and then the next day. But I want to look at the Herb Jones extension, why the Pelicans did it now, why Herb Jones did it now, and what it means for the team going forward with their core. There's also something about the rumors coming out around this team that I find interesting in this discussion as well. Then we're going to look at head coach Willie Green, assistant coach James Borrego, and the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. We got a lot to cover in this show here. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. So let's get into the Herb Jones extension news. He got 2 years left on his deal, but just signed a 3-year extension with the New Orleans Pelicans. So adding on to those 2 years, so it's a 5-year deal total now is what he has here for $68 million. So he's got a total of 5 years and about $97 million left with the Pelicans. The final year of this is a player option. So it's essentially 4 years here. Look, this is tremendous work by the Pelicans in the front office here that's been a little bit maligned over this offseason, but re-signing Herb Jones to just a very team-friendly deal, in my opinion, is really great. The way it works with some of these extensions is players can sign up for up to 140%, so a 40% raise essentially, of their current salary. Herb Jones could earn more than that in theory on the open market. We'll get to that point in a second here. And he decided to forego that, just lock in the extension now with a player option there. And when you look at how this deal is done with kind of how cheap it is, he's going to come in between 12 and 13% of the salary cap going forward, which for a player of his ability is a really good value. When you see that, you go, that seems below. What this basically does is give him a year to get out of it early and then get another or bigger payday then. He could have waited till the end of these 2 years, hit unrestricted free agency, and likely gotten more money than what the Pelicans offered him, the max that the Pelicans could offer him. They could not offer him more than what they offered him here. Let's keep that in mind. And when you look at how free agency has played out, there was one team with significant cap space this offseason. Everyone else was basically re-signing with their own teams or traded well before it. You still haven't even seen anything happen with Jonathan Kuminga here, right? So because of that, I think Herb Jones looked at the landscape. If you're an everydayer of the show, you've heard me say this for a while. You don't earn big money in free agency anymore. You get traded, then you sign a new contract and or an extension with your current team. That's kind of how big name players tend to get moved now. There's an outlier here and there, Paul George a year ago, but in general, that's how it works right now. It's the trade and then extend era. Herb Jones hitting the open market, yeah, he could get more money than this, but would there actually be that kind of salary cap space around? And the answer to that is no. And you see some of the players kind of getting squeezed this offseason. Smart to just lock that in right now. He could have waited an extra year and then still done it. Would have been a little bit more money, but why risk the potential injury after playing very few games last year? You've seen, up and down when it comes to his three-point shooting. This is just a smart deal, I think, on his part, especially with the player option there. And I think it's smart by the team. And I do think this makes Herb Jones a core part of the team going forward. This is someone who gives you all NBA level defense, or all first team, all defensive team, first team, whatever it is. You get what I'm saying. Level defense, is a great role player, just does all the right things, leads by example, wants to be in New Orleans. We love Herb Jones. I bought a new Herb Jones jersey last year for the City Edition jerseys because I like him so much as a player. We want Herb Jones to be here as long as possible. So I absolutely love this deal. I'm happy Herb Jones continues to get paid. And at an average value of around $22.5, $23 million, great piece of business from all sides. And when you look around the league, everyone looks at this and is like, that's all he got? That's the most he could get? It's literally the maximum he could get. Again, he could have waited, but I think it was probably smart for him to lock this in now. Everybody kind of wins here. What I also find interesting about this, and we'll get to the rest of the core guys on the team, because I think Herb Jones is a core guy on this team. Whether he's starting or coming off the bench, we love what Herb Jones brings to the team. The defense is just so fun to watch. That dude just blocks three-point shots like a rate I don't think I've ever seen an NBA player do. The everydayers know that I say this a lot. It's really tough to block three-point shots. If you don't have open space to shoot them, guys tend to not shoot them and will either pass or put the ball on the court and attack the closeout and drive. You don't shoot contested threes for the most part, yet Herb Jones is regularly blocking threes and contesting them. It's truly incredible what he does on the defensive side of the ball. And just being a second-round pick, a guy that they've developed, identified, and grew into what he is now, just super cool to see. You know, everyone around the league wants Herb Jones. You've seen every trade with the Pelicans involves Herb Jones. Any of the Jonathan Kuminga rumors to New Orleans involved Herb Jones in a trade, right? Here's the thing with that. They were never shopping him. One of the things that you've definitely noticed under the Joe Dumars era here is nothing has leaked from the Pelicans for the most part. Derek Queen interest is kind of telegraphed a little bit, but for the most part, nothing, where they control the majority of the information has leaked at all from this team. You didn't hear anything about a CJ McCollum trade. You heard nothing about interest in Jordan Poole, right? None of that was a thing at all, and it kind of hit us kind of out of nowhere in a sense, right? They're keeping a tight lid on things. You don't dangle Herb Jones in trade talks with the Golden State Warriors or other teams and all of that stuff, and then just turn around and give him this sort of extension. You don't do that. Right? He can't be traded for 6 months, I believe. Now, I could be wrong on that, but I believe that's the rule. So it's not like you're looking to move him, and now he can't be moved with that sort of thing. So when that's coming into play here, all these leaks and things and rumors you're hearing about the Pelicans, blah, 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 none of that seems to be coming from the team, and most of all of that is just wishful thinking on others or other people just kind of making stuff up. That I do think is noteworthy in all of this. The Pelicans, for the most part, have been very quiet about the things that they are trying to do, which I kind of like. Makes my job a little bit harder, but leads to more surprises and things like that. Things will come out. I'm not worried about that in the future. But look, they weren't putting Herb Jones in trade talks or anything like that. You might gauge the interest of other teams. If someone calls like, we'd like to trade for Herb Jones, you're going to listen. It's just doing your due diligence on things, or at least just getting an idea of what his value is. That can help you in contract negotiations to re-sign him and things like that. But for the most part, look, he wasn't involved in any sort of thing. I think that means the Kuminga rumors to New Orleans were massively, massively overrated, in my opinion. And I don't think there was anything on the Pelican side when it comes to all of that. And anyone telling you otherwise, not that knowledgeable here. So that's kind of where things stand with Herb Jones. Part of the core, no leaks, love the contract. Really great to see him get paid. If you're happy with it, let me know in the comments down below. So Herb Jones is part of the core. Who else is part of the core going forward? Let's discuss that. And really, the begging question is Zion Williamson part of the core going forward? I'm going to share some insight coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Summer sports are in full swing, so whether you're all about baseball under the lights or golf on the green, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Look, even summer league games you can get in on, so make them a little bit more thrilling. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned over at the beach. You want to really get into summer league? Look, they've got lines for it. If you know a guy's not playing, that's where you might have a competitive advantage. huge when it comes to it. So whether it's the Pelicans playing or somebody else playing, or maybe you want to get into baseball, the All-Star game is here and all of that. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use. There's fast payouts, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. So if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better because new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. If you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins over at FanDuel. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, join us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network at 10:30 a.m. every single weekday. For your second listen, it's Locked On NBA. We're going to get a bunch of new trade rumors coming up soon. I guarantee you that. And Doug, Matt, and Hayes are going to keep you updated on all of the rumors and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Herb Jones is part of the core. Trey Murphy just signed an extension last year. He's part of the core. You would imagine Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen are also part of the core. That seems kind of safe, right? Jordan Poole, maybe not. I'm not willing to put him into the core group just yet, I think. But could be not kind of thing. You know, when you look at this team, that's kind of the main guys. It's Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Fears, and Queen. And maybe not anyone else. Maybe Misi is in there too, but I think they would ideally like to upgrade that position just slightly. But I'll put Misi in there so you have 5 core guys going forward. Is Zion Williamson in that mix? So one, do you disagree with any of those players, right? Fears and Queen clearly are core guys. Herb signing an extension, I think, says core guy. Trey Murphy with his great contract and the leap we're expecting him to take. We'll talk more about him in the near future. He's part of the core. Misi was a promising rookie last year. He's probably part of the core, but everybody else, right? Poole, maybe. He's been in the league for 6 years. Is he part of the core? Is he not? We'll see. DeJounte Murray feels like a no right now, but that's also because he's injured, so it's tough to kind of evaluate him. You know, Jordan Hawkins was in and out of the rotation last year injured. I don't know. I don't know if he's shown enough to really be considered part of the core, could grow into that kind of role. But they've really kind of been aggressively kind of changing this roster because I think they don't particularly like it, which says something about the level of these players and what we're seeing from them. So if that's going to be the case, is Zion part of the core? And I'm not sure the answer is yes. I'm not sure the answer is no either. I do think that if there was a great offer on the table for him, they would have traded him by now. And from talking to people around the league, that's kind of the prevailing feeling. He just doesn't seem to have massive value around the league right now. And while he can be such a transcendent player, and I have long said I will go down with the Zion Williamson ship, and you just kind of saw David Griffin go down with the Zion Williamson ship, trying to make it work around him. You know, at this point in his career, 6-7 years, like it just hasn't come together and worked. And I still think there are big questions about the off-court stuff, the maturity, the mentality, the mindset, like taking care of his body, all of that stuff just has not come together for a guy to have the longevity that you want to lead this team to, I'll use David Griffin's terms, sustainable success, particularly in a small market. That's why, you know, look, in our mock draft, I traded him, all of that stuff. I think the Pelicans kind of getting a fresh start seems to be a good thing. That makes you a worse team. It absolutely makes you a worse team because if you're going to make the playoffs next year, it's going to be behind Zion Williamson. And as I said in a show a week or two ago, you haven't really been able to see the future without Zion, beyond Zion. You know, I've said it begins and ends with Zion. I don't feel quite the same way about that anymore. And I do think a big chunk of this year, and this comes from talking to people around the league, less so with people with the Pelicans, so this is a bit of an educated guess, is that they're looking to rehab Zion's value and then either move him at the trade deadline or next off season. That's as of right now. Look, if he comes out and plays 82 games and looks awesome and shows up in shape and all of those things, you know, that might be one of those things where you're like, well, we can't let him go. we're not going to look to trade him anymore, even though you kind of go in hoping, not hoping, but with that being the general plan for the team. Now, if he does all that, it kind of changes the way you look at this. It changes the equation, and you're looking at something completely different. But let's say he plays 60 games. The team's relatively good enough to be, call them they get into the playoffs through the play-in tournament as the 8th seed, right? If Zion plays 60, 70 games, that's a high-end realistic option for him, I think. If that works, you still feel like, is this team going to take a leap the next year? And you're still not in great salary cap situations. So I think that's when you look to maybe move on from him to kind of fix your books and make it so that, you've got some more breathing room to the luxury tax, because that's not where the team is right now, and kind of build going forward. And then you get a better return. You can maybe pick you up a very good pick in next year's draft to make up for not having one. And all of that. Even if Zion plays really well and you miss the playoffs, that's a way to maybe get a lottery pick and kind of not make up, but do it in addition to your kind of younger core here now of Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, Trey, and Herb. And look, I say younger core. It's not like Zion's old, right? Zion Williamson, despite being in the league for as long as he's been, is only 20. He just turned 25 last week, right? Dude's young still. He's just entering his prime, but I think they're starting to think of life after Zion in a way that they just haven't done it before. And having two, Summer League might say otherwise, but promising rookies in Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, along with other core guys locked in like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, who might have the opportunity to show he's the best player on the team going forward. And, we'll see what Poole gives you, but Poole's going to give you 20 plus points per game. I think you look at that and you go, okay, we can maybe be competitive without Zion if the younger guys take another leap, right? If DeJounte Murray then comes back healthy and we keep him and we move Zion for some more role players, some more depth, and maybe a pick, and add another young guy to this group. So to answer the question of, is Zion part of the core? And I want to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. I would say as of right now, he is not. He will be a part of the core team next year. If they're going to be good next year, it's probably going to be because of Zion Williamson. But beyond that, I'm not entirely sure that he is. I think they would potentially like to make a move. There's just no value to be had in trading him right now. And they're not going to trade him for pennies on the dollar. You could waive and cut him should you need to in some capacity, if he misses a ton of games this season, which gives them a couple of outs with that and that kind of stuff. So I don't see him being part of the core in the same way that I do Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. He's kind of in that next tier where I'd put him, Messi, and some others where it's like, well, it depends. And Zion, look, Zion's whole career has kind of been, it depends. Depends if he's healthy. Depends if he's doing the right things. If he does, I think he can get back into being part of the core. And that's what next season's going to be a lot about. But I think there will be a lot of noise, let's call it, around him when it comes to the trade deadline. So coming up next, I want to talk about head coach Willie Green and James Borrego, because I find that kind of interesting now that Borrego is not going to the New York Knicks. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by Hungryroot. Let's be honest, meal planning and grocery shopping can be overwhelming. So between busy schedules, picky eaters, trying to eat healthy, it's a lot. And that's why I love Hungryroot. They take the stress out of planning by filling your cart with your personalized groceries and meal options based on what you like and need. So Hungryroot uses their smart cart, trademarked, technology to recommend groceries, recipes, and even supplements tailored to your preferences. So whether you're dairy-free, gluten-free, high protein, whatever it is, Hungryroot has you covered. I don't love going to the grocery store. You get in there and it's like, what do I buy? You kind of end up wasting time there, stressing out over what's for dinner. But Hungryroot figures it out for me. And it takes the stress out of all of that. It just takes it, pun intended, off of my plate. So take advantage. Get that kind of bonus there. Take advantage of this exclusive offer for a limited time. Get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And for your second listen, it's Locked On Saints with host Ross Jackson. They're about to get really into it when it comes to training camp. We're hearing about some workouts with Spencer Rattler, Olave, and others. I love hearing all that. I want that team to be good. Ross Jackson's covering everything black and gold with the New Orleans Saints over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I find the decision to not let James Borrego go to the New York Knicks or even interview with the New York Knicks for the lead assistant job. They interviewed him for their head coaching position. He's clearly looking to be a head coach again. I mean, who wouldn't be? And there's interest in him. There was interest in him last summer. There was interest in him this year as well. You know, earlier, there we go. In the offseason, you had the Denver Nuggets interested in adding James Borrego to David Adelman's staff as the lead assistant, and the Pelicans said no. Same thing for the New York Knicks here. They will not let him move for a lateral position. Why is that? Why is that? Right? Now, you might, what they're going to put out and what I've heard is we value him. We think he's a really smart offensive mind. We want to keep him here. This team needs a really smart offensive mind to kind of make sense of all of the pieces that they have and build a coherent offense. But they've had him for the past couple of years, and you haven't really seen that happen. Now, part of that's players. Look, Brandon Ingram didn't want to play James Borrego's offense. That was a big part of it, and it's what led to, the trade and not looking to sign him to an extension or anything like that and just looking to move on from Brandon Ingram. That was a big part of it. Ingram was not interested in doing what the team was asking, whether that's good or bad, right? Like, I'm not going to debate that right now, and I'm not casting judgment on it either way. That's for you, Brandon Ingram fans. I mean that. We've also heard reports that maybe Willie Green has kind of diminished James Borrego's voice a little bit too. And that's not to say there's a rift between the two or anything like that, because I don't think there is. That's just, okay, like, why keep the guy? Why stop him from getting another job that potentially pays him more money if that's something that he wants to do? He wasn't like, I'm not interested in the first place, so don't even bother reaching out, right? The Pelicans are clearly keeping him here for a reason. Is part of that reason to be insurance for head coach Willie Green should they decide to move on? And look, there's no way to read this without thinking that's some of it. It might not be the overriding factor. They might have a lot of faith in Willie Green, but if you had faith in head coach Willie Green, you'd give him an extension. And that would be the incorrect thing to do. Look, I don't think Willie Green is a top 10 head coach in the league. I don't think he's necessarily a bottom 10 head coach. He's probably somewhere in the middle here. But is he someone that's elevating the team after his first year? And I'm not sure the answer to that is necessarily yes. This is someone who needs to grow this year too, and he would say the same thing. That's not criticism. It's just a fact, right? This is going to be the year where there's a lot of pressure on Willie Green to figure things out. He's going to need to straddle the line of development while also trying to win now and make the playoffs. That's a really tough challenge for any sort of head coach. But Willie Green's going to need to kind of walk that very thin line when it comes to it this year. If you believed in him, you'd give him an extension, because I have said, the everydayers have heard me say this for years. You've seen it with Mike Brown and other coaches. You don't want to go into the final year with a coach, that's basically an expiring contract. If they make the playoffs, you're going to have to pay him even more. Then all of a sudden it's a playoff making head coach on the open market, and teams will pay for those kind of guys. Coaching salaries are high. Look, the Pelicans, admittedly, are being kind of cheap when it comes to the head coach. They operate that way. So if you let Willie Green make the playoffs, and look, they don't have a draft pick next year, so that's what they're trying to do. If he makes the playoffs, you've got to pay him more than you'd pay if you signed him to an extension today. For a team that doesn't want to pay a head coach like the $8 to $10 million that head coaches are making, that's a little bit of a risk, because there's probably another team that would if he makes the postseason. So you don't want to put yourself in that position. Then your two scenarios are you paid a bunch of money to keep Willie Green that you don't want to do, which, like, it's not my money. They should do that if he's a good head coach, right? Or you let your playoff making head coach walk for nothing, and that looks really, really bad. What does that say? That's not an ideal situation. So what you end up doing here is you fire the coach in the middle of the season or before. Like that's how this goes. Or you have a long protracted negotiation for an extension like you saw with Mike Brown with the Sacramento Kings before they fired him. You saw Roma do this, right? It goes go European soccer with Jose Mourinho, right? Didn't they fire him in the middle of the season or something like that? And it's like, well, we were going to win a bunch of games. We're going to have to pay him more, and we didn't want to do that. So we just decided to preemptively fire him and not go through that process. That's what happens here. You see that with head coaches. It's a whole lot easier to fire a guy mid-season if you've got, a backup waiting in the wings. If you have someone with the experience to just step in. And it's not like, cool, we're going to fire him, we're going to tank and be bad, because again, what good does that do New Orleans next year? You fire him and you need someone to take over and try and lead you to wins. And that's what James Borrego can try and do. There's a reason they're not letting him go. Part of it is, look, they want him to build the offense and do all of that. That's not, I'm not just trying to diminish him here and say the only reason he's here is for this reason, to eventually replace head coach Willie Green. And maybe Willie Green comes out, coach is incredible, and you've got to pay him. And that'd be great. We want this team to win if Willie Green shows the growth. But Willie Green's going to, I would imagine, be on a very short leash to start next season and is under a tremendous amount of pressure and is, frankly, in my position, if I were him, I'd hate the position I'm in. This isn't ideal. You got to develop these young guys, but you've got to make the playoffs. We're seeing that Jeremiah Fears and Queen might not be, NBA ready immediately or like heavy rotation minutes ready, but we'll see. But them not letting James Borrego interview for these other lead assistant jobs or, whatever, and just shooting that down says, one, about how they view Borrego, but also probably plans for the future a little bit too. There's a lot in flux with this team, as you have seen this offseason, and Joe Dumars is ready to kind of remake everything, and that'll eventually come to the coaching staff too, not just the roster. It'll go to the coaching staff. We've seen some big changes in the front office and the rest of the staff around the team too. So the coaching staff won't be, separated from all of that. We'll see what ends up happening, but it'll likely be during the season. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your head coach. I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Summer League tonight. We got 2 more games coming up back to back. We'll recap all of them and how the rookies are playing, and I'll see y'all next time.